My name is Sarah Parks. I'm a reader in collaborative pedagogies and practice. I've worked in HE for the best part of 20 years in relation to widening participation and student retention. In that time, I've been involved in case study, mixed method and participant action research projects. But here I'm presenting aspects of my doctoral thesis that use diffractive analysis within and through two small workshops, and these were concerned with the role that student and staff intra-relationships play in affecting senses of belonging, an idea central to undergraduate student retention discourse. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll focus specifically on the ways in which diffractive analysis entangled with workshops at a small local university, and within and through Bennett's idea of bureaucratic enchantment that offers us an altar tale to the disenchanted world. The backdrop for my discussion is a heightened frustration with meta-narratives of university education and policy. Specifically, this relates to how student retention is conceptualised as continuation and progression. For the Office for Students in England, UK, undergraduate student retention is derived as a measurement of whether students 1 year and 14 days after they've started their studies either continue at the same higher education provider, receive a higher education qualification at the same level of registration, or continue studies but at a different higher education provider. We also have measurements of good degrees, so 2-1 or above in UK classifications, and the contested measurement of graduate employability. Such measurements reflect the increased neoliberal drive for quantification and performance that generate a sense of political despair that feeds perceptions of an unsustainable and irregular set of degree completion rates and poor graduate outcomes. These are in turn used to evidence inadequate quality and poor value for money to students, their families and to wider society. Students, staff and universities themselves are thus depicted as being in a hopeless, sickly state of existence, requiring remedy or correction, rather than being seen as co-created out of a material, non-linear and hyper-consuming world. This then calls for effectiveness research to uncover what provides the most value for money in getting students to continue, rather than what a higher education experience creates within for the student, their family and wider society. Policy, measurement and the language of student retention display what Morrison Taylor would call developmentalism. Indeed, in my thesis, I disrupted the argument that exploring success through rational measurement of individual progress is not necessarily the only ingredient for understanding student experiences of university and continuation. Rather, we should be paying attention to the varied things that co-constitute experience, and this notion comes from new materialisms and post-qualitative ideas. New materialisms embody a broad suite of thinkers, such as Bruno Latour, Gilles Deleuze, Felix Guattari and Rosi Braidotti, who acknowledge the vitality of matter in common with a traditional mechanical materialism. Yet this way of thinking does so without the associated reduction of non-physical or social, cultural and discursive elements of reality to matter. In this way, new materialisms understand the world through a weaving together of insights from classical materialist and social constructionist paradigms. Additionally, they disrupt but do not discount the Cartesian division between mind and matter and of subject and object, in order to underline that things, understandings, structures and events do not exist independently or without prior relationship. Different also from post-structuralism and post-modernity, new materialisms do not consider reality as only created through our individual interpretations of experience, or the ways that language forms particular truths born from our worldly subjectivities. Neither do they only consider experiences of reality to be the result of humans incorporating details into their previous knowledge, experience and background through processes of reflection. It is therefore the concept of a flat ontology, where all things in the world are seen as being in an iterative process of co-constitution or becoming, rather than a hierarchical ordering of being. New materialisms are approaches that play with and weave together all of these ways of thinking to assert a world of interactive entanglement. The starting point for new materialist inquiry acknowledges that reality is always and an already enmeshed series of relations. Nothing exists outside of or before relationality. Hence things or matter do not exist as entities that are ontologically prior, but mix and blend through intra-action rather than inter-action. And this is an idea key to Barard's concept of agential realism that underpins my thesis. In their idea of agential realism, Barad embraces a philosophy that stresses a self-organising vitality of matter through interactivity and entanglement that displaces the binary oppositions between the given and the constructed. Their concept of diffraction is central to this theory and is discussed through waves of the sea. Here, each wave is both the past, current and future wave, and thus is in superposition, and in classical physics is different from the fixed and bounded particle. Under certain conditions, however, particles will behave like waves. They exhibit superposition, representing ontologically indeterminate or uncertain states. Diffractive analysis, born from this notion of diffraction, recognises this indeterminacy and superposition. Diffractive analysis aims to slice through superposition, requiring reading insights through one another, rather than just take a bird's eye view of what is or has occurred. Further to agential realism is this sense of entanglement and interactivity that disrupts what is commonly understood as agency and the enlightened sense of an independent free will. It is thus not conceived as a human-centred ability or capacity to act or exert power, as determined by cognitive presence or willingness, but agency is perpetually created through an interactive entanglement of all things, living and inert. It is the ongoing flow of things in phenomena, being perpetually born from the interactive entanglements of the natural, socio-cultural and material world encapsulated within the notion of becoming. Situated within the retention literature is the idea of belonging then, and this discusses the different ways that this is generated and experienced and highlights the importance of relationships within and between people and the structures they create. Other authors refer to issues of transition rather than retention that begins to recognise the processes of becoming through constant change. It is within this backdrop and new materialist underpinnings that the two workshops ran at a local small university sought to explore student-staff collaborations. These used appreciative inquiry to get at the positive core or to set out the best of current practices. The workshops would traditionally be characterised as situated. This is to say that they are intrinsically valuable because of the unique and exclusive distinctiveness that a diffractive analysis might offer, rather than asserting any notion of generalisability, validity and or reliability of findings. It is thus not aiming to represent anything other than what it is, being consciously and unashamedly selective and biased. The images here represent the various ways my fellow participants and I were connected and disrupt the bipolar construction of insider-outsider positionality. The workshops took place on a campus and a teaching room I use. Here we were inseparable from the material world of the classroom and the university within which we all exist. We were thus not formed through our differences as an other to one another, but rather are co-constituted within and through each other in an ongoing process of interactive entanglement. There were also other than human co-participants in the workshops, and these included but were not limited to the items you see listed here. Workshop 1 worked by asking all to draw a river, imagining the journey from beginning to graduation. This then generated the discussions taking us through the AI framework. Workshop 2 asked co-participants to take and collect photos prior to the workshop as a generative activity to explore their meaning and material experiences. Agential realism disrupts what is commonly understood as agency and the enlightened sense of an independent human free will. Thinking in this way then, in analysis, exposes the agency-generating entanglement of things, whom together create the texture, atmosphere, mood and effects which condition what higher education is and means, what it does and how it is experienced. Diffractive analysis is a way to investigate the material discursive boundary-making practices that produce object and subject and other differences out of and in terms of a changing relationality. Here you can see the workshops depicted as a crystallisation diffracted through reading different insights through each other, rather than reflecting the same elsewhere. I'm now going to discuss how I diffracted the two workshops using Jane Bennett's concept of enchantment, and particularly bureaucratic enchantment, and their sense of distributive agency. Bennett argues that presenting the world through disenchantment positions those within it as creatures of loss, ultimately depressed and deterred from building an effective attachment to the vibrant materiality of their being. It is then the resulting disaffection to the marvellous human and other than human vitality of worldly bodies that is produced by disenchantment and perpetually deters ethical and political change. Instead, they suggest that enchantment can provide moments where we can still be enamoured with the joys of existence, rather than being alienated from it. This can aid us to pursue issues of social justice as an alternative to the existential antipathy and discrimination that accepting the disenchantment story perpetuates. Similar to Freud's uncanny, enchantment is the resultant experience produced out of wonder commingling with a sense of disruption to our everyday tendencies. This is an almost timeless moment of being at once transfixed in wonder, that in the same moment is concurrently transported away to where the world comes alive as a collection of singularities. All entities then, through perplexing yet familiar worldly configurations of tastes, smells, textures, forms, sounds, and colours, have a place in the production of enchantment. In this way then, inorganic entities and bodies interact in an entanglement of distributive agency, where they collaborate, cooperate, or interfere with forces and elements to produce materialities. Bennett's bureaucratic enchantment is not denying the harmful systematic effects of discrimination and injustice in bureaucracy. More so, this provides a space to acknowledge the immobile and idiotic labyrinth of institutions that produces an uncanny, alluring confusion within humans, provoking both painful and pleasurable effects. Bureaucratic enchantment is thus depicted as an uncanny duo of both maddening and attractive experiences. These enact a strange pleasure born within through the recognition of our material selves in the disturbing complexity of the institutional form. Bennett argues that such man-made systems fascinate and entice us precisely because it mimics the dynamic, far from equilibrium state of the complex material world that as organic entities we humans form a part of. Enchantment, then, is this troubled mixture of artifice and spontaneity that generates a capacity for wonder marking the marvellous erupting amid the everyday. Bureaucratic enchantment takes this idea a step further and considers the ways in which institutional complexity can be seen as a site of distributive agency within through organic and inorganic elements. Cutting the workshop, or slicing the workshop, with Bennett's idea of bureaucratic enchantment helps to see how the photographic images of things in Workshop 2 entangled and worked their photo-thing power on human co-participants, and where the images themselves actively contributed to the production of a sense of enchantment. The cut of bureaucratic enchantment as a tool to think within through the entanglement of the workshops also offered a way to reproduce the experiences of university life for human co-participants. In Workshop 2 for Claire and Joyce, there was certainly the sense that the interacting entities located within through university experiences produced Bennett's messy and ongoing entanglement of wonder to frustration and then back to wonder. Through interacting with these images, Claire produces an account of bureaucratic enchantment. As a formula of distributive agency, this can be read as image Claire student frustrated, transported through the senses, then transfixed back to wonder. Claire notes the thing power of the globe structure at the entrance to the university and the globe photo thing, and what this asserts. In remembering their postgraduate journey, within through the first photograph here, the globe photo thing, the effect of the global structure at the entrance to the university prompts and produces a process of being transported from frustration with their studies to becoming transfixed by wonder at the artwork, and they talk of the globe structure making its presence known. In the act of Claire recounting their experience of arriving at the university campus, they are then enchanted. They continue to talk about the entanglement of the reception desk, following the thinking, being, doing, and the globe photo thing. The thing power of the reception desk photograph, reception photo thing, produces a marvelling at the staff working there. From here, then being transfixed by wonder within through the memory of the staff, they are then caught up and carried away, as Bennett says, with the next image of the closed door and the do not disturb sign. Do not disturb photo thing transports them away from wonder back to frustration of feeling like they are perpetually unable to access services. Within through Claire and the image, an effect of being both physically and emotionally alienated from that area, or person's service is produced. A further example of Clare's perpetual movement within through enchantment is also produced through another image of a staff member's door, where it works its thing power to reignite a sense of wonder at the other, more encouraging connections they have at the university. The amazing lady door photo thing produces a re-memory of Clare's literal transportation across the campus, but also their effective transport from frustration at the amazing lady door photo thing to wonder at, within, through their entanglement with another member of staff. These enchantments, then, are perpetual in that in the process of Clare remembering the different ways in which they interact when on campus and the different entities they interact with, they are both simultaneously recreating or reforming the phenomena enchantment as a product within through their personal history, but also recreating enchantment in the workshops through the re-unfolded process of depicting it, and this is very different from engaging in processes of reflection. It is, then, the entanglement of organic and inorganic matter that is the site of agency produced in practitioner action research, such as in these two situated workshops, rather solely than from human co-participants. Interactive entanglements are integral to the production of subject boundaries or phenomena that infiltrate our human understandings of what comes to matter, of what data matters, and our selection of what we choose to further explore. Within, through this exploration of distributive agency, we can see that other than human entities act as a threshold to our understandings of the collective experiences as created within through the workshop, as well as those prior to it. Cutting together apart the workshops further with the concept of Jane Bennett's bureaucratic enchantment and associated thing power creates an alter tale to the becomings of students within the disenchanted worlds of universities. Yet, read-weaving bureaucratic enchantment as created via the distributive agency of things, enables a different way to think be-do student experiences of the university and the student-staff relationships therein. Within through the workshops, we see how bureaucratic enchantment itself emerges or becomes, and this is experienced through wonder that is at once transfixed and transported to frustration in a moment, that then continues to be transported and transfixed back around to wonder once again. We need to recognise that things such as the classroom work on us to create specific configurations of power that are affected by past, current and future relations. These create the binaries of student and teacher, and where the importance of and for the interconnectedness, care and empathy within and between staff and student becomes. We are then enmeshed in the micro-political acts of all entities, and we need to consider how these affect how we become. Care, empathy and ethic are all produced within the micro-political and are hypercritical in student journeys. Thank you for listening.